By now, I feel that enough people have played Valkyrie Profile 2, and because of this, I need to get this off my chest once and for all. Now, if you read or watched my review of the game, you might have found the personal side of things to feel a bit shallow, and there's a reason for that, as I was aiming to review the game and not spoil the experience for those getting into it. Now, you all know by now that I consider Valkyrie Profile 2 to be the greatest game ever made, and while my review did mention a few reasons as to why, I never really delved deep into an explanation of what makes this game better than the rest. To do this, I must go into deeper plot details and explain the events that occur later on in the game, so I must warn you all that there will be huge spoilers covered here. Firstly, I want to address a few issues the game has in more detail. If you watch the review, then you will know exactly what I am talking about in regards to story, but to be more specific, the reason why the game's narrative is such a slow burn is because of the infamous Chapter 3. While Chapter 1 and 2 act as introductory sections, Chapter 3 presents players with what may quite possibly be the worst MacGuffin hunt of all time. Now, I should clarify that Valkyrie Profile 2 is not the only sole offender here, as many other games suffer from this trope. But Valkyrie Profile 2 does it in the worst way possible, as when you reach the end of Chapter 3, you quickly find out that everything you have been doing up until that point has been a complete and utter waste of time from a plot perspective. From a gameplay perspective, however, Chapter 3 is a very important section of the game, as it provides an opportunity for players to invest time and learn the complex gameplay systems that the game presents them with, as well as presenting them with some gorgeous landscapes to explore, each accompanied with an equally impressive musical score. I'll be touching on the importance of this later, but to sum it up briefly, the written narrative of Valkyrie Profile 2 is definitely not the main attraction here. People who play Valkyrie Profile 2 looking for a deep, engaging narrative are going to be bored to death in Chapter 3, and understandably so. The game doesn't cater to those people in the slightest. Exploration, on the other hand, is where the game shines the most, and I don't mean this in the sense of having the freedom to go where you please, rather the feeling of wanderlust that comes from investing in the game's world, be it gazing at the gorgeous landscapes, enveloping yourself in the sublime music, or reading into the lore and backstory of the many Einherjar you recruit, piecing together a set of events that occurred in years past to illustrate the world's historical legacy. All of this is vital to get the most out of this experience, as it makes the scale of the game feel so much grander than it would had you just perceived it as a set of cutscenes split apart between battles. Valkyrie Profile 2 cannot be viewed as such, though its incessant usage of cutscenes can feel a little deceptive in that regard. This is why it is so important to take your time with this game. It really isn't a long one, as it can be completed in less than an hour by speedrunners, which is considerably short for an RPG. Another thing I want to address is the reason why I suggested that people should probably experience Valkyrie Profile 1 first, and the reason for this is how Valkyrie Profile 2 ties directly into the first game, and does so in two ways. Both games are completely different experiences that are designed to suit the character who is central to the story. While Lenneth's story is mostly about exploring an enigma, Silmeria's story opens up considerably by comparison, expecting you to understand the ways of the world, and the situations that occurred in the first game. Players who witnessed the C ending of Valkyrie Profile would know that the gods Lenneth serve are not quite as benevolent as the player was led to believe. Those who got the B ending spent over 30 hours only to be told that their work is done, implying that their presence in the game was no longer necessary nor welcome, thrown straight into an anticlimactic credit sequence directly afterwards, with a brief hint that the game isn't over, and they have to restart the entire game all over again. Upon finishing the A ending of Valkyrie Profile, the truth is revealed. The gods were using you the whole time, but it's too late to do anything about it, as the world is on the brink of annihilation, and you have to stop it before it's too late. This ending is the one that ties directly into the events of Valkyrie Profile 2, which takes us to the second reason why I recommend people to experience the first game beforehand. The fact that while the timeline Valkyrie Profile 2 takes place in is prior to that of the events of the first Valkyrie Profile game, it is very much a sequel, as it is not a mere retelling of events that happened, it is a changed timeline, influenced from events of the first game. So what you see in Valkyrie Profile 2 is essentially a time paradox. Not only that, but the entire story of Valkyrie Profile 2 revolves around preventing the events of the first game from ever occurring. If you never played the first game, then you will never understand the importance of this, as the events that occurred in the original timeline directly lead towards the devastation of Midgard in the first game, which is a notoriously grim world where humans suffer through miserable lives, begging for death, only to find that death may quite possibly be even worse than life. Valkyrie Profile 1's story is all about questioning not only the meaning, but also the value of life, and does so in the most brutal and unapologetic way possible, to the point that it might as well be considered to be the most depressing game ever created. As while the game never gives players a definitive answer, it does lean closer to that of nihilism and hopelessness, to the point that players experiencing it may even be susceptible to dark thoughts themselves. It's definitely not an experience for everyone, but it is one that is necessary in the realm of video games, one that I respect greatly, as it doesn't sugarcoat anything. When you consider the fact that the main driving force of the second game is to prevent all of this from happening, players who have played the first game will be considerably more invested in the story, as they are emotionally driven to stop all of this misery and bring hope to the world, assuming that hope can even exist in the first place.